Hey, we're starting to enter my favorite time of the hockey season. Now that 24 out of the 32 teams have officially been eliminated, their off seasons have already begun, we are starting to get our little tidbits or little rumors here and there. We're starting to get more stories leaking out into the media about what things are being said behind closed doors. And this video is one of those conversations. Now, I know what you might be thinking. There are a lot of people who have some very opinionated stances on the source for today's video, but because the guy is a writer for The Athletic, because the guy is apparently an insider to some degree, and I say that very loosely, I do think that this idea is worth bringing up, because even if this wasn't really what's happening behind closed doors, I do still think there are conversations we can have about these players that is somewhat valuable to the hockey community. So today we're talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. They had recently been eliminated by the New York Rangers in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs in the first round, so it's probably time for them to start lacing up their golf shoes, hitting the courts, and just enjoying the rest of their lives. You have some guys that might go to the World Championships, etc., but for all intents and purposes, the Penguins are pretty much done this year. The big conversation that has been kind of clouding over the Penguins and their media and their fans the past few months has been next season, because you have yourselves a team that has a few notable contracts expiring, and it's going to take a little bit of heaving and hoeing to make everything fit under the salary cap. The Penguins right now have about $29 million in cap space for 2022-2023, but they do have to re-sign the following names: Evgeni Malkin, Kris Letang, Brian Rust, Kasperi Kapanen, Rickard Rakell, Evan Rodriguez, Danton Heinen, Brian Boyle, Nathan Beaulieu, Casey DeSmith, Alex Dorio, and Juuso Riikola. Now, I get it, some of these guys are a lot more important than others. I don't really think Nathan Beaulieu or Alex Dorio are going to be breaking the bank and giving the Penguins such a difficult time in these contract negotiations, but the guys up top, man, these are some pretty interesting names. Malkin, Letang, Rust, all in need of new contracts, and the conversation as to what could happen in the future has been a really interesting one. Mostly because with the two stars in Letang and Malkin, you know what you're getting with these players. They are older, yes, but that does not mean they're not effective. Evgeni Malkin this season put up 42 points in 41 games played, and he was also a point per game in the postseason. Sure, he had dealt with injuries, but he still was a point per game. There wasn't really anything else you could have asked for out of Gino and his game this season, and he's coming off a $9.5 million AAV contract, which he had signed back in 2013. He'll be 36 years old by the time next season starts, and because he is still an NHL star, you have to ask yourself, how much do you sign him for? How long do you sign him for? Are you even able to re-sign him? Is there a hometown discount that he's going to be willing to take? He said he's going to be willing to take one, but how far back is that discount going to be? Kris Letang is also 35 years old. He had recently turned 35 in April, and he just had pretty much one of the best seasons of his entire career. 68 points in 78 games played, a 58 assist season, which is a career high. He had some of the best numbers of his entire career, and he's coming off a $7.25 million cap hit, which was also signed back in 2013. Many Pens fans will talk about Kris Letang and his impact on the back end, and how this season we felt that a lot more than previous years. Sure, there's still some growth that needs to be exhibited by other defensemen on the team, like Marcus Pettersson. You've got John Marino, who is locked up for a while too. Some would say that Brian Dumoulin has also declined and isn't worth the $4.1 million that he's making anymore. And so for Kris Letang, this is a guy that was so important to the team this previous season, and he also needs a contract. Not to mention Brian Rust, who is having an amazing career so far too. From Notre Dame to the AHL, breaking onto the scene with the Penguins, doing what he did in the postseason when he won back-to-back cups. Now this season he had 58 points in 60 games played. He is a point-per-game player, and he was coming off a contract where he made $3.5 million AAV since 2018. So this is a guy that could probably demand a significant amount of money too, and the fact that he is 30 years old makes it a lot easier for him to go long-term as well. Because the Penguins have a cap crunch, you have yourself some conversations going around as to what they could do with these guys. This is what Rob Rossi said on 93.7 The Fan Sports Radio, and it was tweeted out by Andrew Filipponi. Penguins insider Rob Rossi said on 93.7 The Fan that the Penguins offered Letang and Malkin 3-year deals worth $15 million each, so $5 million AAV. And those lowball offers did not sit well with Sidney Crosby. Wow. Now, the reason this is a big deal, assuming this is true, which we're going to go for the sake of this video and making an actual conversation about it, you could totally understand both sides here. Firstly, the team has to go out there and say, okay, look, you guys are 35, 36 years old. You guys are not going to be in the NHL for too much longer. Sure, you're talented and we need your services, but we've got a cap crunch. Like, we could not go out there and realistically say that Malkin, you're going to go from $9.5 million to $8 million, or Letang is going to go from 7 point whatever to 6.9. It's gonna need to be a bigger drop than that to actually make things work for the Penguins and their salary cap. And besides, this is how negotiations start. You talk about two sides on polar opposites. Letang is like, hey, I had a career year, I'm so good, give me a $10 million AAV. And the Penguins are like, okay, no, $5 million. And then the two parties would negotiate back and forth until a number somewhere in the middle is reached, which in this case would be, let's say, 7 point something something, which would actually be in the realm of what he was getting anyway. But that's neither here nor there. The fact is they were starting out with these numbers that were in that $5 million AAV range. Now, Sidney Crosby, on the other hand, being upset about this, I could totally understand that being the case as well. Sid the Kid is an absolute legend. We know his impact on the game, and we know just the leadership that he provides out there for his team. Malkin and Letang are like brothers to this guy. They've been brothers for the past decade and a bit. So if Crosby's going out there and hearing, hey, you got offered $5 million, you, Evgeni Malkin, who just put up a point per game and who was making $9.5 million a year for the past, 7 years? GTFO with that $5 million AAV, that is such a low ball. Same could be said about Kris Letang. Of course, I'm just kind of filling in the blanks here, but it feels to me like if Crosby is in a position where his friends are getting this amount of money, he could likely just say, okay, no, screw that, go to free agency, you'll get $10 million in the open market because, yeah, you're worth it. Furthermore, Rob Rossi also was quoted by saying that he would not expect Malkin, Letang, or Rust to be back with the Penguins, insinuating that all three of them would indeed go to free agency, and the Pens would lose them for nothing. And so, again, you could go out there and start debating the legitimacy of where these ideas came from. Oh, did the Penguins really offer Letang and Malkin $5 million AAV deals? Is Crosby really upset at them for doing so? There are questions that we will likely never get the answers to, but just for the sake of making a video about it, I wanted to talk about it here on the channel and give my 2 cents. I could understand both sides. Like, if the Penguins really did feel desperate to keep these guys, which it should be evident that they would want to be, I mean, it's Letang and Malkin. These guys were franchise players for your team for the past decade and a bit, so obviously there is a level of commitment here that transcends the common courtesies of contracts and age and expiration date and all that, because these guys are still good. Letang just had a career year. Malkin is a point per game. Even though he missed out on half the season, there still are so many things to be happy with when it comes to how they perform. It's just the Penguins have so much money they're going to have to move out if they wanted to keep these guys at dollar amounts they could likely get on the open market. I'd seen people talking about Marcus Pettersson. There are other conversations to have about other players. Kasperi Kapanen, maybe Jason Zucker thrown in there. There are a few other names that can free up some extra dollar amounts over there too. But at the end of the day, this is the starting point. Nothing has been done yet. There are still players on the team, and there are still contracts that need to be signed. So talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about what the Penguins should do, where they should go in the direction of their money. Should they try to re-sign Malkin and Letang to huge discounts? Say $5 million flat, that's it. We're only going to go with this for 3 years, maybe make it $6 million AAV, just to be nice. Or do you think they should be able to shell out a little bit more money if they make some bigger trades in the process to free up that cap space? Furthermore, is it even worth it to trade away younger players like Kapanen, etc., just to get 1 or 2 more years of Evgeni Malkin and Kris Letang at 35, 36, 37, 38 years old? You gotta remember, the Penguins in their prospect pool, not really the best, so it's not really like they have a plethora of young talent coming in to replace those lineup spots in the next few seasons. So, bigger conversations to be had with the Penguins for sure. Talk to me in the comments all your thoughts about what the Penguins should do in terms of making trades, signing guys. Should they just let these players go to free agency? Rob Rossi thinks that Malkin, Letang, and Rust are all gonna leave, and I know there's a lot of people that will go out there and contradict his entire sentiment, but either way, talk to me in the comments all your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this video. and bye.